get out there, you're starting to deal with professionals. You're dealing with people who've been in the business for a while. They're probably mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, depending on what level. And they've been working often in a corporate environment. Most publications are owned by larger publications. What do I mean by business etiquette? It means presenting yourself in a professional manner, again, be it the way you speak, the way you dress, how you carry yourself. When you are sitting in a meeting with a couple of people and they are your potential clients, you really want to go on a tank top or shorts, right? You want to be dressed appropriately. When you are emailing or speaking to someone on the phone, you want to speak clearly, be precise, in the language that you use. I think you really don't want to be using a lot of slang. Don't use the smiley face when you're emailing a client. Don't use the abbreviations that we use when we're texting and that sort of thing. You definitely don't want to use profanity. It's making them feel comfortable that if they put you in front of another client of theirs, let's say they are a public relations firm and they're going to put you in front of their corporate client, or they are someone arranging you to photograph a celebrity. They want to make sure you are going to carry yourself properly. And so I think business etiquette is, you just want to make sure people get that right first impression of you when you meet them for the first time and when you work with them. And it goes to, not drinking and not picking up on the waitresses or waiters, that sort of thing. It's common sense, but if you haven't spent a lot of time in more corporate environments, it may feel a little different. Even, I didn't shave today, but, facial hair. I was at a shoot for a nonprofit, and they were having an awards dinner at a auction house in Midtown Manhattan. So it was, really high end. Everyone in there, all the guests are in suits and coming straight from work, and it's for these, young children getting an award. Kind of like you guys, they were graduating from this program. And this photographer from, and I won't name the photo agency, but they're very big and they started with G. He showed up in jeans, kind of a ratty t-shirt with some weird saying on it, and a backwards baseball cap. Look, that's fine. He's running around. I guess he's chosen to present himself that way. I'm in a sports jacket, slacks, and who, as the crowd looks around, as the client looks around, who do they think is like the more appropriate professional photographer? So you want to think about how you are being perceived by people around you, and especially your clients. All right. So what's your rate? What's your budget? Thank you. There's this psychological thing called the anchor effect, right? If I give you something for free and say it's worth $500, you'd be pretty happy, right? If I give you something for free and say this thing's worth $50,000, you're going to be ecstatic. If you tell someone I'm worth $25 an hour versus if you tell someone I'm worth $200 an hour, how do you think they're going to think about you? How are they going to view those, $25 photographer an hour photographer versus $200 an hour photographer? Who do you think they think is the better photographer? $200 photographer. So that's called the anchor effect. So in a way, you are what you charge. I have a rate sheet on my website for corporate events, and I start at $200 an hour, a minimum of 2 hours. Normally, when I finish booking a job, it's often less than that. I'm not charging maybe $150 or $175, but as I said, under promise, over deliver. You know, I've set this bar. Hey guys, I charge 200. But look, you're a new client. I'd like to work with you, and I'd like to do more business with you. So why don't we do it for $175 an hour? And all of a sudden they feel good, right? They're like, oh, all right, cool. I got it a little cheaper than, you know, this guy has said. So, you know, when you think about what you charge, think about that, you know, anchor effect. Because once you kind of put that pole in, that stake in the ground, it's hard to change it a little bit. You know, if you charge that guy 25 bucks an hour the first time, and then they hire you again and say, well, actually, you know, we're going to make it 150 this time, they're going to probably see, you know, thank you, right? So to step back, as you're building your business, the NPPA, National, I want to say Press Photographers Association, has this great calculator. It's online. The URL is on the last page of your sheet. It's called the cost of doing business. So you enter like your rent in there, you enter the cost of your equipment, cost of insurance, you plug in all these things, electricity, you know, all the things that, all your expenses as a business owner or photographer, you plug that in, and then it spits out essentially what your cost per hour is. And then from that, you can begin to think about how much should you charge, right? Because ultimately, if you have a studio and you bought all this gear on your credit card or whatever, you're spending a certain amount of money per hour, whether you sit, you know, in front of your computer, you know, watching YouTube, or if you're out shooting. So you need to figure out, if I'm shooting 30 hours a month, what do I need to charge per hour to make sure I'm meeting all my expenses every month, right? So I don't want to get too in-depth into that. There's a lot of books out there, there's a lot of resources, but this is a fun one to play with and just you know, see, you know, what are you spending per hour, and then what do you need to charge to get that back. Who's heard of these terms? Everyone heard of usage? Okay. What about the day rates? Okay. Creative fee? These are a couple of things that people begin to talk about, and I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this because I think the business is changing, and I'm going to appreciate Alicia's input on this. You know, in the past, people tended to charge more for usage, meaning how are you going to use the photographs? Not anymore. I agree. I think nowadays people are charging more or paying more of a day rate. That's especially true for me because the work I do, where I'm, you know, shooting a corporate event and I'm giving them 200 photos of, you know, people drinking cocktails together, is not something that is usually considered under usage, and that's quite. Yes.
And everything else I would say is really fruitless, and it will hurt you to meet the people. Like I have a tough client, and you know, and he just fired their last photographer, which is why they're not using me, because the photographer was fighting over this crazy advice, looking into this legal battle. He lost the ability to work with this worldwide hotel chain over not wanting to use the images for, you know, most clients want, you know, want to know that they're hiring a photographer to shoot it. They don't have to worry about
Yes.
whether or not they're going to have to go back and pay you 5 years from now to continue.
Essentially, the usage is you're renting the photo to the guy. That's, you know, how to think about usage. Yeah, I've shot this photo and I'm going to charge you, let's say, for every billboard you put it on, or for the number of brochures you print, or the number of bus, you know, stations you hang that poster in. That's essentially how to think about usage. You know, you're charging based on their usage. Is it on their website? Are they using it for 3 months? You know, is it? Are they printing 50,000 catalogs? Are they also using it on the website? Do they want to keep using it in perpetuity, forever? There's a lot of resources out there that talk specifically about usage. If you shoot advertising or some really, more high-end stuff that's put together by creative firms, advertising firms, you will need to be familiar with that. But I don't want to spend too much time on it, but you should just be familiar with that term, usage. I think initially as you're starting off, you're not going to be dealing with that too much. You're going to be charging people more, hey, my day rate is, $1,200, $500, and you will vary that depending on what they want, how much equipment you need to bring to do something for them. And then the last thing here, kind of the creative fee. People might talk about a creative fee as well, and sometimes they'll combine it with the day rate. It's basically what I charge to lend my talent to you, right? So maybe you don't charge a $1,200 day rate, you charge a $1,200 creative fee. That's for my creative input all day on set, working the lighting, taking the pictures, that sort of thing. So these are terms you're going to hear when people ask you, how much you charge, and you start thinking about estimates, which I'm going to get into. Question?
Why is the usage as popular?
Why is the usage popular now? Earlier, I was talking that there are less magazines, fewer newspapers. So a lot of there's print ad sales are kind of declining, even though there's still a lot. But I think the proliferation of other photography outside of advertising means that usage is really an advertising term, whereas with all this other photography going on, usage is a smaller part of the whole pie. And people don't think about it as much. If you're taking a wedding, if you're shooting a wedding, nowadays most people, you shoot the wedding and you give the photos to them on a CD. That's what, I've heard a lot of people ask for. They don't want albums. In the old days, you took the photos and then, showed them proofs, and they would order the photos from you, and you'd print them for, $3 for 4x6, $15 for an 8x10, and that's how you made your money. So the market is changing, and how photographers get paid is changing. So, wonderful machine. This is actually a photography representatives. So they represent photographers. They're agents for you. They're a pretty big firm. They represent a lot of photographers. But what's great about them, if you go to their blog, they have something called, I think, real world estimates. And every now and then, one of their agents or their editors will go up and they will take a real world example of someone who, let's say, was asked to shoot for Nike, and they will show what that estimate looked like and walk through kind of line items, how they thought about everything, how they came up with what they were charging. And they have all kinds of stuff on there for all sorts of different types of jobs. So definitely, take a look at that when you get a chance. And if you're asked to put an estimate together, it's a great resource. They'll call people and say, on Craigslist, but you get credit for it and exposure, You'll hear that quite a bit from people who don't want to pay, and I would say those are the types of people you want to steer away from. Although I've said that it has, gotten my foot in the door for a few jobs. Just be wary when you are answering Craigslist ads or other stuff online. You can tell by the tone of the emails, if they're written in all caps, if spelling is incorrect. You kind of get a sense of, who your potential client might be. Are you going to get paid? Are you really going to get anything out of it? So, I don't put a lot of credibility in Craigslist ads that don't sound professional. So I think that still speaks to, how to carry yourself and communicate. So here's an example here. So Beth calls you on your iPhone. You can't talk. You arrange for her to, talk at another time. And as I've said, so I'm Beth from Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. This guy gave me your name to shoot some portraits. What do you charge? What do we answer? What's your budget, right? And some of the things you want to think about is, again, how are you going to use the images? Even though we don't focus so much on usage, you still want to get an idea. Is it going to be a couple of small, 200 by 200 pixel headshots on their law firm website? Is it going to be an ad that runs on the subway for their law firm? Those are two different animals, and you should definitely charge differently for that, even though the photograph is essentially the same, right? You're doing a headshot, and it may appear in the subway or it may appear on the web. You would definitely charge more if you're doing an ad campaign around something. What's your budget? Oops, sorry for the kind of misspelling there. I should have got that. What do you need from the shoot? As you get down to details, how many photographs are you looking for? Is it an environmental portrait? Is it something against just a gray sequence? What's your time frame? It's just an example of some of the questions you want to think about as you kind of figure out what the job is, so you can do an estimate. You don't want to quote something low and then have them ask you to shoot something like this, which would take like a half day to set up a really stylized photo like Brad Trent has taken here. He shoots a lot for Fortune magazine, Barron's, Forbes, some of the big financial stuff. He's got a great website. Brad Trent, he's on the list as well. For portraiture and business portraiture, he talks in his blog, talks a lot about how he lights things, where he puts the lights, his post-production, how he approaches it. So that's a good resource there. We're kind of winding down here. I'm just going to walk through, a couple of basic estimates here. If someone called me to shoot a corporate event for half day, let's say it's a business seminar where people are essentially sitting in a theater and listening to speakers, and then I'm photographing people on a coffee break interacting. It's maybe very basic. My creative fee for that, I call it a creative fee. I usually don't call it a day rate, just so the client gets the idea that something creative is involved. Quote them a day rate. Maybe I need an assistant. Maybe the theater's dark. I need to put some lights in there, so maybe I'll charge for lighting. This is kind of important for you guys just starting out. If you don't have a lot of equipment, I've got all my own strobes and grip and that sort of thing, so it doesn't cost me anything extra to, put a couple model lights up there on pocket wizards and trigger them remotely to get the right light. But for you guys, you may end up having to rent that kind of stuff if the job calls for it. So, if you're renting it, you should definitely bill it back to the client, where possible. That may be something that you negotiate with them, but typically if you have to get specialized gear, you can bill it back to them. And oftentimes photographers, even if they own the gear, you will charge the client for using it anyway, and you can charge something that's close to, what the rental fee is. So, if I have to lug my lights, set them up, take them down, I'll charge a little for that. Digital processing, if they want next day delivery. Over time, you'll develop, your own idea of what you're going to charge for stuff. Again, I put mine on my website so that clients can look at it and they get a sense of, what their budget should be if they want to work with me. And over time you'll learn, but you want to make sure you're charging people for everything that you're giving them. This one has a little usage tucked in there. I just kind of made this up. Let's say PC Richard and Son will want you to come in and shoot a model looking at a microwave if they're in their offices, or a couple of models going through all the appliances. You come up with a creative fee. Here, you would think of a usage fee. Let's say this is something they want to go, print catalog. Could be a newspaper insert, but let's say they're sending out a PC Richard catalog. Plus, they want, don't worry so much about these terms. There's websites where you can find all these terms. They want you to have in-store display, point of sale, up to 12 stores, 3 months, and a website as well. So you charge them for that, and then assistants make up the models, and a more elaborate job will have many more line items. Some of the big advertising jobs that are $100,000 will be 3 or 4 pages of stuff: meals, travel, tech scouting. If you have to go look at the site beforehand, you charge for that. All right. So when you're writing a contract, You know, I think some of the key things you want in a contract are clear. I'm not going to walk through this because it's there. And you guys aren't quite at the stage where you're putting contracts together, but know that there are a lot of resources out there. ASMP, I think you can download sample contracts from their websites. You know, if you Google, you know, photographic contracts, there's a lot of resources out there. You don't have to invent this thing from scratch. They have all the, you know, legal terms and stuff in there for you to fill in. Let's talk a little bit about gear. As you come out of school and start, you know, being out in the market, this is definitely a military saying. 2 is 1, 1 is none. What do I mean by that? 2 is 1, 1 is none.
You need 2 in case 1 breaks?
Absolutely. You need 2 in case 1 breaks. I'll jump to here first. Yeah, you know, when you first start, if you are holding yourself out as a professional and you're going to deliver an image solution to your clients, the last thing you want to do is show up on the job and have something go wrong with your equipment. And if you only have 1 of something, you have none of something. So at a minimum, you need 2 camera bodies. That doesn't mean you need to have 2 5D Mark IIs. You can have a 5D and a 20D, or you can have a 20D and a point and shoot. You need 2 flashes, 2 memory cards, and these 2 lenses. You need to be able to get the photograph if something goes wrong with your equipment. There has to be some kind of fallback plan for the critical gear. Whether it's borrowing from one of your classmates, hey, I'm going to shoot. Can I borrow your 50 fixed? Can I borrow your zoom? Can I borrow your flash? And can I borrow your camera body? That's what you know, friends are for. Borrow from your friends. So yeah, I think initially, oops, that went off. Is that you think it overheated or? Anyway. Okay, that's fine. As I had said, a bad carpenter always blames his tools. You know, if you're a competent photographer, you should be able to take a decent photo with whatever equipment is at hand. So you don't necessarily need the top gear, but you do need enough that if something breaks or doesn't work, you have enough to get the job done. Who here is a Nikon person? I'm a Nikon guy. All right. Everyone else is Canon?
Kind of shoot with either or, but either or.
Okay, that's good. Look, as you guys decide what gear you want to buy, I mean, you've seen the gear here. I've got a closet full of stuff as well. And you're going to add gear over time as you get money and you decide what you want. You know, a couple of key things is, remember, you're buying a system, right? It doesn't matter if you're Nikon or Canon, but it's a system. You're getting bodies, lenses, flashes, remotes. You know, you are investing in a system of equipment that you want to be expandable, right? You want it to grow with you. You want to be able to buy better lenses. Maybe you, at some point, want that 400 2.8 or you know, some exotic tilt shift lenses. You want to go from the 420 flash to the 580. You know, make sure that you have a system that will grow as you grow and, you know, has all the tools that you might need going forward. Make sure it's versatile, right? You want to make sure your gear can be used for a lot of different stuff. And as you think about your lens choices, whether you want fixed or zoom, you know, depending on what you shoot, you want to make sure your first few purchases, I think, you want them to be able to do as much as you can, right? What's your, do you own a lens?
Yeah.
What do you have? 100 millimeter, okay. What's your, do you have a lens? You have 2, what do you have? 250, okay. My favorite lens is a mid-range zoom. I highly recommend that that be one of your choices of a first lens. For me, it's the 2470, the one I actually have on my D800 there. It's just such a versatile lens. I can do anything with it. I can shoot wide, I can shoot relatively tight at 70. You know, that first lens you buy probably doesn't need to be a 300-2.8 or a 16mm fisheye. You know, you want those first pieces of gear to be very versatile, so you can use them in a lot of situations. And then finally, you want to make sure your gear can integrate with other things. You know, with Canon or Nikon, you're not doing anything, you're not going to go wrong because so much other gear, flashes, pocket wizards, you know, work with that. Call from your friends. And then, you know, wrap up by talking a little bit about legal stuff. You don't have to worry so much about it just yet, but it's something to think about as you go forward. You need insurance as a photographer. You need insurance as a photographer, right? Yes. So what kind of insurance? As you begin to grow, the insurance you're going to get, and it's in there, and I'll just mention it. You'll figure it out later when you come to it. It's really general commercial liability insurance, and essentially what that means is if you are working somewhere and you put a light stand up. Oh, okay, awesome. Whoops. Let's see. I'm almost there. General commercial liability. So you throw up a light stand, you're at an event, the waiter bumps into the light stand, knocks it over, it hits this poor old woman on the head. She has to go to the emergency room and get, 15 stitches.
That's awkward.
If you do not have insurance, you are going to pay a lot of money out of your own pocket because that insurance would normally cover that kind of stuff. It means instead of you being liable or on the hook for this stuff, the insurance company's going to cover it. And I won't go too much into that, but eventually when you start your business, you're going to have to go out and find an insurer. And at that time, you can circle back to us, whether we send you to Tom Pickard or someone else. That tends to run about $750 a year. So, but you ultimately need it. I was doing a shoot for Bloomingdale's and Brides Magazine. We were shooting a lot of Bloomingdale's bridal registry tabletop stuff, so plates and that sort of thing. And we went to, we're going to do it at the Condé Nast studio. But I brought some extra gear with me, reflectors, soft boxes, that sort of thing. And when we walked into the lobby of the building, and I had my assistant with me, and we had a stylist, and the person from Brides, the security guy said, "You can't come in here and shoot unless you have a certificate of insurance." And the Brides person was terribly embarrassed. She didn't know that the building required that, but the building required that I have insurance. Fortunately, I had a policy. I just had to call my guys in California. They PDF'd one to me. Within 15 minutes, we showed the guy and we were able to go up. But imagine how embarrassing that would be if I booked this job, I'd set it up, we show up, and then I have to look at the Brides person and go, "I actually don't have insurance. Sorry, right? You're not in good shape at that point." And that ended up being a $12,000 job. So, you're going to need it. People will ask you for it sometimes. They will ask to be, you need it. And ultimately, it's going to protect you if something goes wrong on a shoot, something's damaged. I was shooting in the Metropolitan Museum one time, and something fell over. It wasn't our fault. And fortunately, I had insurance, which would have covered it if they wanted to charge me for it. So you definitely need that. At some point, you're going to think about a legal structure to your business. Are you a sole proprietor? Are you an LLC? Again, there's a lot of resources on the web to help you through that process. Permits. Do you need a permit to shoot in New York City if you're not using a tripod? No. If you set up a tripod, do you need a permit to shoot on the sidewalks in New York